If you want to figure out a way to make your grandchildren proud of you, then figure out a way to be active in defense of their future. They will be impressed. It's the greatest gift that you can figure out how to give to the people who come after you, not just the work that you do, but the example that you set.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're looking at how we can use our age, experience, and power to make necessary changes in society. Our generation is known for not accepting things as they are, and we wanted to talk about how we can continue to fight for change.
Our guest today is Bill McKibben, the founder of Third Act. Bill created the first global grassroots climate campaign. He's currently a professor at Middlebury College in Vermont. Mr. McKibben has been awarded numerous prizes for his work on peace and has recently written a memoir called The Flag, the Cross, and the Station Wagon. A graying American looks back at his suburban boyhood and wonders what the hell happened. Bill McKibben, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Well, what a pleasure to be with you and on the podcast with my favorite title of anyone in the whole country. So it's a joy to be with you.
Well, thank you. And thinking of titles, we'd like to know what Third Act, how you came about the name Third Act and why that name and why did you create the whole organization?
Absolutely. I've spent much of my life writing, but also organizing to try and get change, especially around climate change. And I often worked with young people who do a tremendous job. I mean, you all know the name Greta Thunberg, and you should. She's one of my favorite people to work with. But as she would be the first to say, there are 10,000 like her, incredible youth activists, and they have 10 million followers. The only drawback was that I heard a few too many people my age saying, oh, it's up to the next generation to solve these problems. And that seemed A, unfair, and B, impractical. We have to, if we're going to deal with things like climate change, or at this point, preserving democracy in our own country, we're going to have to move fast. We can't, there's not time for the Greta Thunbergs of the world to grow up and become prime ministers and CEOs and things. It has to happen now. So when one looks around for who has the structural power to help make change happen fast, one of the first groups of people you hit on are people our age. And so we organized Third Act to start taking advantage of that. There are 70 million people over the age of 60 in this country. We punch above our weight because we all vote. There's no known way to stop old people from voting. We ended up with most of the country's resources financially. We're not all rich, but we have about 70% of the country's assets. So we should be able to make a difference. And that's what we're trying hard to do. And at some level, succeeding in. There's now about 100,000 people in Third Act arrayed across the country. We've got working groups in almost every state, and they do extraordinary things, pass laws, influence elections, and help illustrate just how fruitful the collaboration between young and old can be in these kind of existential fights.
Bill, what were the first and second acts that we had? You're calling this the Third Act. What were our first and second acts?
Well, so this is what's so interesting. If you're in your 70s or 80s now, your first act when you were young was actually back in that period of extraordinary, rapid social, cultural, political transformation. The apex of the civil rights movement, the moment when we began to take women seriously in
Yeah.
public life, the first Earth Day in 1970, when 20 million Americans, 10% of the then population, were out in the streets. That's the biggest demonstration ever in American history. And so those were formative moments. They're in our DNA as a generation, in our kind of muscle memory. I think it's fair to say that in our second acts, in the kind of years of our careers and lives and things, perhaps inevitably, we stepped away as a generation from some of that work. We were identified perhaps more as consumers than as citizens. Um, that's not true of everybody. There are wonderful counterexamples and things, but if we're speaking generationally, that's what happened. And it's one of the reasons that I think we've ended up in some of the pickle as a society that we have. But that's water under the bridge. And now people coming into their third act find that they have time, which is the greatest gift of all. They have a lifetime's worth of skills and connections, and they're eager to put it to use on behalf of the future, on behalf of their legacy, on behalf of their kids and grandkids. Um, and that's, I think, why it's been so easy to get people organized to do this kind of work. Now, you know, you, you have to be a little, you have to come at it to a certain degree with, I think, with a sense of humor um, about it all, because younger people are a little annoyed, and sometimes with good reason, with our generation. You know, a lot of that kind of okay boomer stuff, and the idea that we kind of took the cream off the top and left them with a world that in many ways is not working as well. But we found that that's easy to overcome as long as you're willing to acknowledge it a little bit and not be too serious.
So how do people get involved in the third act? It's a volunteer organization, I know,
That's
but
right. All of us are, almost all of us, me included, are volunteers. You go to thirdact.org and you give us your name and your zip code, and we'll easily connect you up with other people in your area. So there's these working groups by area, and there are also working groups based around what people did their life's work on. So there's a third act lawyers, third act educators, third act creatives, third act faith group filled with old ministers and rabbis and imams and so on. And there are also lots of people who are just sort of national at-large members, and we get together every a couple of months to update everybody on a big national all-in call. And it's been really fun to assemble this congregation, as it were, especially since so many of the people who were, well, young when we were young are still alive and want to take part. We've had great visits from Carole King and Jane Fonda and Bette Midler and lots of other people who, for good reasons, are iconic parts of our generations.
So, what do we do with the people who say they're too depressed to do anything, that they don't even want to read the paper anymore? They don't want to watch the news. So, how can we motivate these people to help us make change?
Well, look, I confess I feel that way a good deal of the time right now. I've been alive a long time, and I've never lived through a period anything like the one we're living through at the moment. It feels like an hour-by-hour assault on all the institutions, ideas, and things that we've built over our lifetimes. So I understand the pain in it. I think that we have to do two things right now. One is play defense as best we can. So we work with other groups all over the country, like Indivisible, in helping organize, demonstrations and rallies and things to protest the firing of federal workers, to protest the rollbacks at environment and education and so on. That's important. It has to be done. We also have to play a little bit of offense too. And that's the thing that I'm most excited about our work for this year. Um, we're going to host on September 20th and 21st across America a big event that we're calling not Earth Day, but Sun Day.
Mm.
And the point of it's going to be to try and drive home the fact, which I don't think people completely understand, that we've now reached the point when energy from the sun and the wind and the batteries to store them when the sun goes down or the wind drops are the cheapest, most obvious forms of power on the planet. Now, there in California, y'all have done a good job of deploying these technologies. And last year, California used 25% less natural gas to produce electricity than it did in 2023. That's a huge change in the fifth largest economy in the world. That's a big enough number to start taking a bite out of climate change. We need that to accelerate in California, and we need it to spread everywhere else. So we'll be having a day filled with a kind of positive vision for the future, a celebration of where we already are, parades of e-bikes and e-vehicles, electric vehicles. We'll have people opening their homes who have heat pumps and solar panels to show their neighbors how efficiently they work. I bet you can imagine the many men our age who would like nothing more than the chance to talk for a long period of time with their neighbors about the technology in their basements. We're going to have all kinds of stuff like that, and it's going to be beautiful, optimistic, and hopefully will help push for change. You know, in America, it costs about 3 times as much right now to put solar on your roof as it does in Europe or Australia. And the reason is we have all kinds of unnecessary local permitting and regulations and things that make it very hard. In Germany in the last year, apartment dwellers, 1.5 million of them have just hung solar panels off their balconies. It's called balcony solar. There's a long German word for it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful idea, and it really helps. But in most of America, that's illegal. You need all kinds of permits to do it. You can't just go to IKEA and get yourself a solar panel the way you can in Dusseldorf or Bremen, you know. So we're going to try and work hard to change those laws and make it easier. These are the most important things we can do now to help with the climate. And I think in some ways, they're among the most important things we can do to help with our democracy. Because if you look at the forces that are derailing our democracy, an awful lot of them are connected to the fossil fuel industry and to their great fear of change. They poured astonishing amounts of money into the last election cycle, and now they're reaping the benefits. We need to turn that around. And one way of doing it is showing people that clean energy is no longer an alternative energy. I think sometimes people think of power from the sun and wind as sort of the whole foods of energy, you know, nice but pricey. It's actually the Costco of energy. It's the cheap stuff available in bulk on the shelf. And we've got to get that message across. And we think Third Act, well, we've got lots of collaborators on this, but Third Act will be playing a central role in helping roll this out. So set aside that fall equinox, September 20th and 21st, and prepare to bring all your creativity to bear on figuring out how to offer a positive vision that one people can rally behind and maybe escape some of that depression for a few days.
Is Third Act able to attract people from both sides of the political spectrum, or is this a very divisive issue, climate change?
We find that renewable energy in particular is not so divisive. It's interesting. When we do polling around, say, solar energy, it gets very high marks from both liberals and conservatives for different reasons, I think. I think sometimes conservatives think my home is my castle, and if I have solar panels all over the top, then I never need to depend on anybody ever again for anything, you know? And I think liberals tend to think, oh, we're, you know, networking the groovy power of the sun, you know? Um, we can work with those kind of differences. That's not an unspannable difference. So we're hopeful that this kind of thing brings people in. But I will say, there are differences that are very hard to bridge, and we're seeing them right now. I mean, the Trump administration represents, from our point of view, everything that we've spent our lives working against, trying to prevent. We come from a generation that valued research into science and health, from a generation that tremendously valued education, so on and so forth. And so I think pretty much everybody at Third Act is dumbfounded to watch the attack on those things that we had spent our whole lives thinking were bedrock parts of the American experience.
So, at the same time that we're talking about energy issues, we have to talk about democracy. So,
Mm.
I think even on your website, you say that Third Act is working to safeguard democracy. So,
Mm.
what are you doing for democracy in general?
Well, so over the years, we've worked very hard to do things like register lots more voters. We've done it with projects. One of my favorites has been a project still ongoing called Senior to Senior, where we get older Americans to write high school seniors at their graduation and tell them why voting's been important to them in their lives, and encourage them to register to vote, because only about 10% of high school seniors actually manage to register for the first election in which they're eligible. Now, that's been a lot of fun for the people writing those letters. They get to think back over their lives. And it turns out, astonishing for many of the people who got them. If you're 18 or 17, there's a pretty good chance you've almost never gotten an actual letter in your life. So all the work that we put in Palmer penmanship class, 50, 60 years ago, proving useful, as we take on these things. Now the work is more desperate. I mean, we're trying to just save the access to the right to vote for people. And this is really important for seniors. They're trying to take away things like vote by mail, um, which are obviously people who are older are less likely to be able to get out to the polls in person. And there's no reason you should have to. That's why, I mean, there's entire states like Oregon that have successfully run their election system only by mail for decades now with no problem. Um, so we've got a lot of work to do. The defense of democracy I mean, look, uh, when you were young, would it ever have occurred to you that you would live to see the day when people would invade the US Capitol, killing police officers in order to stop the counting of votes in an election? That would never have occurred to me. But that's the world in which we live in now. In fact, all the people who did that have now been pardoned and are being celebrated as heroes in some quarters. So I'm not telling you this fight is easy. It's not. But it's really important that those of us who got to spend our whole lives enjoying the democracy that our parents and grandparents built for us, that we figure out how to defend it.
I was thinking as you were talking about when my grandsons both walked out of high school a couple years ago for climate protests, and I'm thinking, okay, Grandma, what are you doing? Your grandsons are out there marching, and both of them said, Grandma, you got to be doing something. So it is a way
Well,
to get involved when we look at what our grandchildren are doing.
if you want to figure out a way to make your grandchildren proud of you, then figure out a way to be active in defense of their future. They will be impressed. It's the greatest gift that you can figure out how to give to the people who come after you, not just the work that you do, but the example that you set. And if being an American means anything, that's what it means. Many of us had long decades when we were too busy to be able to do the work of democracy, to really be effective citizens. But we're not too busy now. We have the time to do it, and it would be a shame and a sin if we didn't take that opportunity and seize it.
Well,
So,
before you leave, can you
yes,
give us some hope, considering what's been happening in the country and in the world? Is there anything you particularly are hopeful about?
I'm very hopeful about the the fact that we could run this world on different principles, that power from the sun and the wind is now the cheapest form of energy. That should allow us to make huge and rapid change. And I'm very optimistic about the fact that there are a lot of people rising up to demand that change. That's what organizing is and what movements are. That doesn't mean that we're going to win. We have to win quickly, and we're up against extraordinary organized power and money. And left to their own devices, they will carry the day. Our job is to make sure that they don't, to provide enough democratic, nonviolent, but inspired organizing that we're able to change the course of history once again, as we did in the years when we were young.
Thank you, Bill. We will keep our listeners attuned to what's going on. It's an important subject for all of us to get involved with. Our guest today is Bill McKibben, founder of Third Act.
Well, and thank you both very much. And what a pleasure to be able to say I was not born yesterday. Take care, y'all.
Today on News You Can Use, we want to warn you about another scam that's been affecting older adults. I was recently called for jury duty, so this one was of particular interest to me. According to scamicide.com, scammers call random people and pose as a sheriff, threatening to arrest them for failure to show up for jury duty. They demand a payment of $12,000 through what they call a bonding transition center. As we have warned you in the past, scammers are able to make the caller ID look official. So this time it looks like the calls are coming from a local sheriff's department. But what made this particular scam so unusual is that the scammers were not in a sheriff's office, but were actually prisoners in a state prison using a smuggled in cell phone to commit the crimes.
They're always looking for new ways to scam us. So they're asking for pay us with a gift card or cryptocurrency. Sometimes the scammers will ask for your social security number to confirm your identity, which of course is never needed. And the biggest clue that someone is trying to steal your identity. Of course, this is a scam. If you miss jury duty, you won't be called by real court officers who ask for a payment.
So keep in mind, contacts from courts will always be in writing through the mail. You will never receive a text message saying you failed to report for jury duty, and no legitimate clerk will tell you to pay a fine over the phone using a credit card or gift card. This is always a scam, so ignore and delete the message.
So did you go to jury duty?
I did, but I wasn't picked.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks to our guest, Bill McKibben, founder of The Third Act. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. They're all free and they let us know you better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.